So I got a big black package today with a huge nib on it. Yeah, obviously it's a Jinhao X450. What else would it be? So I've been meaning to actually get one of these for quite a while, and I'm surprised that it's taken me so long to get one of these. This is the Jinhao X450, and if you know a little bit about fountain pens or have looked for about 10 seconds on eBay for a fountain pen, you will have probably seen one of these in the listing. It's made by Jinhao. They make these on a massive scale. They'll pump all these out and they will probably sell them to distributors on eBay or Alibaba, and then they will just ship those out. The price ranges from about $3.50 Australian to about $6 depending which model you get and depending how stingy the eBay seller is. The reason for that price variation is possibly down to the color and style of this pen. The nib and feed unit will remain the same, though the body can change. This is the black version, but you can also get sort of textured versions, sort of like, it'll have like a sort of wrapping, like, I'm not going to say wallpaper, but it does have a sort of wrapping that some of the pens will have. It'll have red or a stony color or a whole bunch of other colors. So this pen, for all intents and purposes, should always cost below 10 bucks. And because it costs less than 10 bucks, quite a lot of people have these, and they have garnered quite a pretty good reputation on a whole bunch of the fountain pen forums and a whole bunch of fountain pen users. And because it has such a reputation, and a good reputation, I could not resist picking one of these up. And I also couldn't resist because it only cost me about $3.50, which is pretty good for a fountain pen. And for $4, you'll get a Jinhao X450. I got two samples of ink. They're not very good inks, but you still get samples of inks. And you'll also get a converter. These take, I believe, standard international converters. This one's loaded up with Jinhao's, one that Jinhao makes. So, without further ado, let's get into why these have garnered up such a great reputation. Alright then, let's have a look at some of the specs for this pen. So, capped, the length will be 14.1 centimeters. Uncapped, it will be 12.4. And posted, it's about 16 centimeters. So in all honesty, this pen is actually a lot smaller than I actually expected. And to be quite frank with you, the nib actually makes a lot of the length of the uncapped measurement, because if you actually just measure from where the nib begins to where the bottom of the pen is, it's only going to be about 10 centimeters. So the pen, where you only include the grip section and the body of the pen, it's actually pretty small, which is something that I actually didn't expect when buying this pen. However, for my size of hand, and for a lot of people, it's actually pretty comfortable to hold, even though that it might be a little bit smaller than a lot of people thought. Yes, it is going to be small, bigger than the Pilot Prera, but it is not going to be as big as a pen, say, the Montblanc 149 or the Pelikan M1000. Now, the issue that arises is, well, why not just post the pen? Because, as I said, posting the pen will make the pen 16 centimeters long. Now, yes, you can post the pen, and it posts quite securely, and it is comfortable, but if you do choose to post the pen, the weight of the pen will be 42 grams, and uncapped, you lose about 15 grams, because the cap is surprisingly heavy at about 15 grams, so just holding it like this is 27 grams, which is fairly heavy for a pen. It's heavier than a lot of fountain pens will be when they are posted. So 42 grams honestly is pushing the limit of how heavy I would like a fountain pen to be. Yes, I do like heavier pens at around 30 grams optimal, but 42 grams is really just pushing it. I probably couldn't write an essay with this posted. So, as well as that, the grip section is actually pretty goddamn thick. It's about 12 to 13 millimeters, depending on where you take the measurement. So it actually is really nice to hold. It's a nice thick grip, you know. It's nice to have something thick to hold onto. Yeah, so if we have a look at the body for a second, and in fact, before I want to say that, this pen is actually pretty hard to cap, honestly. You probably can't cap it with one hand easily. Do you hear that? It's actually pretty hard to cap. Now, I think that's pretty nice, but I do find it a bit annoying that it is pretty hard to cap it with one hand. So this is just if you ever receive one of these pens and you tug on it, tug on it, the cap's not stuck on. You just have to tug a bit harder. For the body, as I was getting onto, the body's a standard cigar shape. It looks sort of similar to maybe a Mont Blanc 146, but and I think that looks really nice. It's not a Mont Blanc, obviously, and in fact, it's not even a rip-off of a Mont Blanc. You want a Mont Blanc rip-off, you buy the Jinhao 159, but I think this sort of classic cigar shape is actually pretty nice to look at. It has, well, I'm not going to say gold, as goldish coloured accents to it, and for the while that I've had it, they have resisted scratching pretty well, which is nice for a $3.50 pen. The grip section, that a lot of people will point out, does have these sort of grippy bits for your fingers to rest on, and I have been pretty vocal about my hate for the Lamy Safari and the Jinhao 599, because they have special, beveled edges for your fingers, and I really don't like them. But here, honestly, they're not that bad. In fact, I got to say, it's pretty nice because on this pen in particular, even rubbing your fingers up and down it, depositing a whole bunch of human slime and oils, this pen doesn't tend to get slippery. The only complaint that I do have is where your thumb rests. It will rest a little bit on here, and this bit here will get slippery. But for the main part, it shouldn't worry you that much if you do have oily hands. Another thing that I want to talk about is the grips. So not the grips, the threads. The threads along here, as well as the threads in here, they are pretty solid, so I would not worry about sitting on this pen and accidentally having it snap. Saying that was a bit of a concern with the Jinhao 599, which I did manage to snap because the threads along here were really thin and they could snap like that. The last thing I would like to mention is that the converter that comes standard is pretty big, I gotta say. It's a bit bigger than the ones that are in my Parker, and a lot bigger than the ones that come in Pilots, so it will actually hold a bit more than a mil of ink, which is pretty nice, I must say. Alright, let's talk about the thing that people seem to like the most about this pen. It's going to be the nib. When you first see this pen, the thing that is going to jump out to you is probably the size of this nib. If you're more accustomed to, say, Parker or Pilot pens, because this is actually a pretty big nib compared to them. It is a number 6 size nib, so it is a standard size nib, and because of that, you can replace it with other size nibs. So websites and retailers such as Goulet Pens or even eBay or maybe even Alibaba, you can go ahead and buy number 6 size nibs and replace it, and they should fit. So if you don't like the nib that's on here, maybe it's the wrong size for you, maybe it has baby's bottom, whatever. You can go on, find maybe broad nibs, italic nibs, stub nibs that are number size and number 6, and they should fit in this nib. As well as that, you can buy Zebra G-Flex nibs. They will need a little bit of forcing in to this pen, but you can get a Zebra G-Flex nib, force it in. I believe there's a video on it. You have to use pliers or something, and then you can have a pretty decent flex pen that you don't need to dip every 2 seconds. Another pro, well, a pro of having a number 6 size nib as well is you can have a pretty relaxed writing style. If you have a look at, say, maybe the Waterman Hemisphere, because it has such a small nib, I have to hold the pen at a pretty high angle. Compare that to the Jinhao, you can probably tell that there is a big difference in the writing style. It's a lot more relaxed, the pen's at a much smaller angle, and maybe for some people, when writing in exams, a more relaxed writing style may allow you to write for a lot longer. Depends. For me, it is nicer, but it doesn't make all that much of a difference. I know some people, they hold their pen like that, and it just absolutely kills after a while, and I can see why. Another thing is, usually there are bigger nibs than this. This is a number size 6 nib. You can get number 9 size nibs, and I believe size 10. You'll have to buy Pelikan M1000, M800s. You'll have to buy Montblanc 149s for that. You get the point. That's probably the top of everything, but for the most part, pens with bigger nibs, you'll be paying a lot more money. This is $3.50, and if you like a big nib and you just don't have that sort of money, or you just want, a bigger nib pen because you can buy it, this is pretty good. Now, from the factory and pretty much from what I've seen, this is a medium nib, and I have not seen any Jinhao X450s with fine or broad nibs. You're pretty much stuck with this single nib. Now, it is slightly thick for a medium nib. It's thicker than my Parker, it's thicker than my Bayor, and it's also thicker, obviously, than the Japanese nibs. So, if you do have smaller writing, just be on the lookout, because I have smaller writing, and on lower quality paper, this can bleed, and it can sort of make small writing, maybe E's and O's and A's, pretty much unreadable. So, that being said, it could also be due to an excess amount of ink being deposited onto the page, because this is a particularly wet pen, so when doing A's and E's and O's, there could be a little bit too much ink coming through. It could just bleed, make the line a little bit thicker than it would be if the feed was a bit drier. I'm not exactly sure of that, but the line does look a tad bit wider than the nib. So those of you that are looking for, maybe a larger nibbed pen with a fine nib, either get one of these and go buy a replacement number 6 size nib, or you're gonna have to spend a little bit more money and then get a pen that comes in multiple sizes with a number size 6 nib. Now, the nib is flexible. It's not so flexible that I would say it's a semi-flex nib, but it does allow a little bit of line variation, though strangely, I would say really strangely, for a wet pen of this type, it does tend to railroad, which is pretty annoying. It won't railroad once you get the ink flowing, but sometimes when I do just start writing and I press down a little bit hard, this pen will railroad. Though I really got to say, you do got to push it quite a bit for it to actually get to the point where it would railroad. Also, because this is a wet pen, it will use up ink fast. It will really use up ink. this could probably last you, say, 2 to 3 days of heavy use, but that being said, it does have a pretty large converter, as I said before, so 2 to 3 days is probably what I estimate, and what I have gotten in the past. Obviously, if you use your pen a little bit less, you might get a few more days from it. Though the one thing I really must say is that this is pretty scratchy for a medium nib, and it's not scratchy enough to the point where it's annoying, and it's not scratchy to the point where I can't write with this for a long time. It just is a little bit of annoyance. It's a bit grippy on the page. It's not going to affect it or my writing, but I gotta say, medium nibs shouldn't be all that scratchy. This one is. If you listen to, say, my Pilots or my Watermans or Parkers, this is certainly, you can see here a distinct scratch with this pen. Okay, so what do I like about this? As it's always going to boil down to with these cheap Chinese pens, it's got to be the price. Really, it has to be the price. It's only $4. And considering when you compare it to, say, a Pilot Metropolitan, that costs about $55, a Lamy Safari, which costs about $50. This is less than 1/10 of the price. And in some respects, I like it more than those pens. I like the grip more than those pens. I like the size of the nib more than those pens. And I can afford to lose this, more than 10 times or break it and go out, get another one, and still be better off than having one Pilot Metropolitan or Lamy Safari. I also like it having a really big nib that's, as I said before, cheap, and a nib that also can be replaced. So even if I don't like this nib, I can go ahead and replace it. As well as that, I like the fact that I can replace this nib and make it a flex pen. Zebra G nibs, they'll cost about $3. I have one in the mail, and I can't wait to convert one of these pens over. I love flex pens, I love dip pens, I have a dip pen set, though I do find it annoying sometimes having to re-dip the pen, sometimes even more than one time per letter. So I'll be pretty happy when that nib arrives and I can then do the conversion. Another thing that I like is the build quality for a cheap pen. This metal, threads, excellent. Everything's really good for a pen that costs $3.50. Considering how, Pilot Kakunos, Pilot Metropolitans, even some of the Lamy Safaris, which I've seen have had their threads break and snap off, considering that this I'd trust more than a Lamy Safari, does say something about the Jinhao's build quality, and considering it's 1/10 the price, I sometimes find that staggering. Something else that I like is that the grip is not slippery. It resists human slime well, and well, that's a thing that a lot of pens miss out on. A lot of pens, they'll be brilliant, though the grip is going to be, slipperier than the devil's balls. So I really got to hand it to it. A grip that resists slipping. What do I not like about this? So it has to be the scratchy nib. It's a bit annoying. I gotta say, it's not the worst thing about this pen, though it is a complaint that I have, compared to other medium nibs that aren't scratchy. Medium nibs shouldn't be that scratchy. I really gotta say, it is a bit annoying. Is it the worst thing? No. Am I gonna stop using the pen over it? No. It's just a complaint. Big complaint though, well not big complaint, but a complaint is just how heavy this pen gets when I post it. 42 grams, weight hanging out the back. It's just annoying. when you factor in the moment and all that, all the turning, it is going to be pretty annoying to write with for long periods of time. And the last thing I want to say is it is pretty annoying that this pen is able to railroad, considering that it is so wet.